Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Caliban, Back from Hell, out April 25th on Century Media Records. The album has 13 tracks, 41 minutes in length, and this is the band's 13th full-length studio album. They are a German metalcore band. When it comes to the design of this record, I really like how they built this album, and I like it for two different reasons. The first reason is that they put all the singles at the top end of the album, or mostly at the top end of the album. This allows the listener to come in and kind of know what you're getting yourself into, at least as far as the first couple of songs are concerned, and allows for a much easier experience getting into the record. Once you're into that record, then you know there's going to be surprises down the line. There's something to discover as you progress through the album. That allows you to stay connected with the record a lot longer. That allows the listener to stay one with the album for the duration of the record because there's always something new to discover, and it was an easy progression into the album because of those singles up top. Outside of that, the other reason I really like this design is because it feels like a set list. It has an intro, and then after that is a very dynamic, fluid album with a lot of ebbs and flows, exactly the type of experience that I would expect from a live set. And it's also an album that has a lot of aggression, but at the same time mixes in some melancholy into the sound. This allows for those natural ebbs and flows, which is exactly the same kind of experience you have when you go see a band live. Bands normally don't want to play too many songs that have a lot of similarities in a row. You want to create more of a dynamic flow, and this album definitely represents that live experience as far as a set list is concerned, but now in a studio format. Once you get into the sound, this is obviously a metalcore record at heart, but it has also other influences that allows on one hand for the sound to be a little bit thicker, and on the other hand allows for the sound to be a little bit more versatile. This is an album that brings in some deathcore elements to the table, and it brings in a lot of more modern melodic metalcore elements as well. And you're going to see those more on the melancholic side. You're going to see the deathcore influences and the more traditional metalcore sound having a more of an influence on the aggression and intensity that the sound has. So it's an album that becomes rich because of it allowing the band to go in different directions, but never losing track of their path and of what this record is all about, creating a sense of cohesiveness throughout, but not necessarily repetition. Now, the sound on this album has those two variants, like I mentioned before. On the melancholic melodic side, I really like what they did with this record because not only sound-wise, it emphasizes a dark ambiance within the songs, bringing in the clean vocals in that same portion or in that same momentum does exactly the same thing. So it elevates the level of darkness of some songs, and it elevates the ambiance, the atmosphere, and the somber mood that they have in store for you, not only from a lyrical standpoint, but also from a musical and vocal standpoint as well. On the other side, on the heavier side of the sound, you definitely have a thick sounding album, and I think it's a little bit too thick at times. The production on this record, on the heavier side of the record, could have emphasized some elements better than others. It could have segregated the guitars a little bit more away from the drums, giving them a little bit more of a gap and perhaps filling that gap with the bass in order for all of the different layers of the textured sound that the record offers to be a little bit more defined so that you could hear all of the different elements together, but you could still feel what each and every single one of them has to offer. At times, not always, but at times, in the more aggressive side of the album and the more intense side of the album, the sound kind of becomes all as one. You're still able to see the impact of the drums, you're still able to see the impact of the guitars, but not as well defined. This obviously creates a sense of thickness, it creates a sense of volume, it adds to the aggression and adds to the intensity, but I feel like you could have had aggression and intensity regardless and still have those sounds a little bit more parallel to one another and not as intertwined. This obviously takes nothing away from the quality of the drum sound and the quality of the guitar sound. It's just how the two cooperate with one another in the overall mix, in the overall production. Because I actually enjoy the drum sound overall tremendously throughout this record. It's an album that has depth and width as far as the drums are concerned, and I think that really helps create some size as far as the overall album goes. Once you get into the guitars, this is definitely a guitar focused, a guitar driven album. offering different ideas, offering different sounds, different textures. I just wish that on the heavier side there was a little bit more of that definition that I mentioned earlier, because you definitely see that in the more melodic, melancholic side of their sound. Once you get into the vocals, the album is as dynamic as the sound is. I love the dynamics, I love the flow, I love the use of the harsh vocals in the right place with the clean vocals, some more screaming vocals. There's a lot of depth in terms of the vocal performance to the different levels of delivery that you're going to get throughout this entire record. All of them really combining well to not just bring the lyrics to life, but to bring the emotions that are within those lyrics all the way to the surface. Vocally, this album is absolutely flawless from top all the way to the bottom. And when you look at all these pieces, this really feels like one of the most concise, most focused, most precise sounding records that the band has released in the last 5 years. It's not chaotic at all. It has a very clear idea of what it wants, and it takes you there. And I definitely enjoy the overall experience as much as I enjoyed the individualities of the songs. Now, as far as those songs are concerned, I want to share with you my favorite 3 tracks on the record, and I want to start off with Insomnia. Insomnia is definitely, hands down, my overall favorite track on this album. It completely stood out when I was listening to this record because it has so many uniquenesses. The first uniqueness is where it sits on the track listing. It's in between 2 tracks that have 2 guests. One is Joe from Fit for an Autopsy, and the other one is the Browning. So you have these 2 bands, these 2 features squeezing this song in between, and this song is so melancholic. There's such a sense of sadness to it, but still it has a lot of heaviness. It has a lot of melody, obviously, and it has one of the most emphasized choruses of the record. I could go as far as to say this song is just one really long chorus, because the chorus really repeats itself a lot. The verses feel very minimized in order to really expand on the chorus, on the impact that it has. I love the breakdown that follows the second chorus, really stretching out the song and giving the song a little bit more emphasis, a little bit more texture, so that the track doesn't feel as repetitive as it actually is. But the repetition of this track is something that you can totally live with because of how cool the chorus is, how cool the melodies are, and definitely the vocal performance. This is a song drenched in emotion. Then we have Overdrive. This is a track that has this brutal assault to the senses, both musically and vocally. The vocals in the chorus change or help change the mood of the song, but it doesn't really impact too much the overall sense of heaviness and aggression that the track has. Musically, it allows itself to stay almost linear, just with a small ripple in the chorus, emphasized by those clean vocals, and it's overall allowing for a little bit of a melodic, melancholic break, very subtle break, so that the song then continues with that sense of aggression and intensity that it has. It's a very heavy, brutal, thick sounding song. Another one that falls in line with this track is Glass Cage. The 2 songs have a lot of similarities to them in terms of how they're structured, in terms of how the choruses impact the verses, and also in terms of how the sound overall just feels relentless. The drums are heavy, really heavy, and the guitars are also equally as heavy, infusing some melodies here and there in order to diffuse, or in order to thin out a little bit of that heaviness, allows the track to feel more dynamic. But overall, it has a very linear approach, top to bottom, and just with a few little ripples, very similar to Overdrive, but not as heavy, or perhaps I would say Glass Cage is heavier than Overdrive, more consistently heavier from that standpoint. But the 2 songs are very equal to one another, and that's why they really stood out to me in terms of packing as much of a punch as possible, making the songs really heavy, giving the guitars this really sense of heaviness and drowning out the sound, bringing all the way down, and then emphasizing it even more with that heaviness of the drums behind it. 2 tracks that have a lot of similarities but still feel very unique with their own characteristics. This is it, Caliban, Back from Hell, out April 25th on Century Media Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, guys.